Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. We're super excited. We have MK Sullivan for you guys today. Thank you, MK, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. If you listeners weren't aware, we'll link in the show notes too. I was recently on MK's and Danny's podcast Subhub, and so if you guys want to check that episode out, go over there and give it a listen. And today we get to pick MK's brain about all her nutrition, hydration nuggets and knowledge over the years of racing. But before we do that, I'm gonna let you break it down for me, MK. Your two truths and a lie.
Okay, here we go. I am the youngest of my siblings.
Okay.
A lot of my family is very upset that I did not go to school for music,
Okay.
and I have been an athlete since I was 5.
Ooh, okay. Let's see if my research served me well. So I feel like the athlete since 5, I think that's true. And then I think the youngest of your siblings, I'm gonna go with that as a lie because I feel like you were in choir or something like that when I was doing my research. But so maybe your family's was upset you didn't go to school for music. I'm not. Well, so I'm gonna go with the sibling one, but don't tell me the answer, and we
Okay.
will reveal it at the end of the episode for the listeners. Without revealing any of your truths or lies, why don't you take us back a little bit and share with us what got you interested in endurance sports and running on
Okay.
dirt?
Yeah, well, I guess running on dirt is kind of more recent, I guess, as relative as that can be. But
Mhm.
I grew up swimming mostly. Like I
Mhm.
started swimming at a really young age and was probably thought I was going to go to college for that until I was like maybe a sophomore or junior in high school.
Mm.
And my dad had me start running cross country, I think when I was in like the 8th grade or something. And mostly he was just like, it'll be good for your swimming. And so I
Mm.
started doing that. But then, by the time I was a junior in high school, I realized that I was way better at running than I was at swimming.
Yeah.
I'm 5'4" and I haven't grown since the 5th grade. So like I was super good at swimming when it was like
Yeah.
11 to 12
Mm.
age group. And then everyone else, like, grew to 6 feet or something. And
Um,
I was like, guys, wait, my
yeah.
limbs, they're too short for
Yeah.
this.
The wingspan.
Yeah. And
Oh
so,
man.
yeah, I went to college for running and ran at the University of Nevada and tried to do the whole professional track slash road thing after and really didn't enjoy it that much. But I went to college here in Reno, Nevada, where I live, and we have tons of trails. So I
Yeah.
started kind of trail running in college, but met a couple of friends through my now husband towards the end of my career at Nevada and like really just started exploring the trails more than like the 1 8 mile loop that I knew from the university
Yeah.
back when I was like a 5th year in college, and that kind of was the end of it for me.
Wow. That's great. And what was the first trail race you signed up for?
The first trail race I ever did was the Sierra Crest 30K, which
Nice.
is up in Truckee. They don't hold it anymore, which is such a
Oh,
bummer, but
yeah.
it was a really cool race.
Oh, yeah. Truckee a beautiful, beautiful place. And so is Reno. One of my friends who's actually a trail runner does not race, but she's a trail runner and she's a cardiologist PA at the hospital there in Reno. So if you ever need cardiologist stuff, she's your girl. But yeah, we when we visit her, we go and do those trails up there. So I know how amazing they are. Is it a P Vine or
Divine.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yep.
one's by her spot. Um, Awesome. Okay. So coming off of Black Canyon 100K, what are you thinking for 2025?
2025 is going to be really weird
Oh yeah.
because I took my golden ticket. I'm signed up for Western States, so end of June I'm running 100 miles for the first time.
Wow.
But in the middle, I'm planning on doing the Boston Marathon. So I'm going from like 100K trail training to road marathon training to 100-mile trail training.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and I think it'll be good because obviously you have to be fast to run Western States, and
Yeah.
I always feel best when I feel fast. So.
Hmm.
I'm excited to run Boston, but I think that's
Yeah.
probably not the approach that most people take to running Western States.
Yeah. Wow. So do you do your own programming and coaching or do you have a coach?
I have a coach. His name is Rick Floyd, and when I was a fifth year at Nevada, he was the volunteer assistant,
Mm,
and we became friends. And when I was looking for a trail coach, because I kind of wanted to like get into it a couple of years after college, I was like, well, Rick's the only person that I know that runs trails and is also a coach.
yeah.
And I mean, it's worked out great. We've been working
Yeah.
together for like 8 or 9 years now, something
Wow.
like that. It's like the second longest relationship I've had outside of my husband, you know? So it was like right around the same time that I started
Yeah.
dating Tommy.
Wow, that's great. So how, like, what's kind of like the bird's eye view talking about kind of how your year's broken up like that? How is training like roughly going to evolve, do you think, to kind of like lead up to Boston and then shift back towards 100-mile
Yeah.
focus?
I typically am like a high mileage athlete a lot of the times anyways. So I don't know how much like my mileage will fluctuate. Like I'll
Hmm.
probably still get up to like 100 miles a week in the lead up to
Hmm.
Boston. And then I imagine for Western states there might be 1 or 2 weeks where I'm closer to like 120, but still it'll
Hmm.
be like more likely that 80 to 100 miles a week most of the time.
Yeah.
So really I think the biggest change will just be like obviously for Boston I'll be doing a bunch of stuff at pace.
Hmm.
Um, long runs at pace, workouts at pace. And then for Western states I think we start adding in a lot more like downhill
Mm.
efforts and like stimulus just
Hmm.
because I'll already have like the marathon block under my belt and so the speed will already be there. It'll just
Yeah.
be like building up my tolerance to be able to run all the way from Palisades to Forest Hill and then be able
Mhm.
to like run.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Um, okay, that makes me think, and I was telling MK too before we hit record, you guys should listen to our episode, um, podcast episode with Women in Distance, I think is the
Yeah.
name of the podcast. Really cool episode. MK shares her story about her recent race, and I was listening to it while I was running, and I just thought just a good pairing because she was sharing her story about her race, and I'm just made me run a little faster, I guess I should say. Um, so yeah, thinking about all that, like how do you take care of your body with like, and certainly the downhill stuff, I know it could be a lot harder on the body. How do you manage?
Yeah. I am notoriously really bad at taking care of my body. But I have learned in the last like 2 to 3 months that I'm not 24 anymore. I'm almost 31 now, and now it takes me about 30 to 45 minutes to get ready to run in the morning.
Yeah.
And I like have to roll out, have to stretch,
Mm,
have to be lifting now. I can't just like be like, oh, maybe I'll do this stuff sometimes,
yeah.
like I have for the last, 17 years that I've been running or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, very recently I've had to start like heating my muscles before I run and like doing my pre-run exercises, which were a requirement. Like my college coach was like, he'd watch us do our pre-run exercises every day to make sure we were doing them. And as soon as I
Yeah.
left college, I was like, never again. But
Why were we doing those?
yeah, I'm back to pre-run
Yeah.
exercises. I'm rolling out beforehand.
Yeah.
And then yeah, afterwards just trying to be better about like stretching because stretching is something I just like have never really done.
Yeah.
Which drives my husband crazy because he like has always had to do
Oh,
these things.
yeah.
But it's finally caught up to me, so I'm working on it.
Yeah. Are you somebody who's naturally pretty like mobile, like stretchy?
No.
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 Okay.
But I've never been that injury prone
Mm.
before, so I never
Mhm.
saw the need to be flexible until
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yep. When you say you need to warm up your muscles, are we talking like via movement, or are you actually like putting something on there that's physically heating them up?
Both. Yeah, I have like a little rice pack that I will like heat up
Oh
and I'll
yeah.
like heat my hip flexor and then my Achilles and then my hamstring and it's like and then after that we'll do some more like dynamic stretching, just to move but also like loosen things up
Yeah.
and I've also recently started walking for like 10 minutes before I run just like to really make sure that things are warmed up and I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it
Yeah.
happens fast."
Yeah, yeah, I experienced that as well. I've had many friends and clients tell me they're like, just wait, when you get old, like you got to do all these things, and I'm like, no. And then,
Yep.
oh yeah, you do, you do it, and it pays off. I mean, you feel that much better when you start your session too when you're warmed up.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so thinking about kind of your timeline here, swimming, cross country, now we're getting into longer and longer, and then
Mm.
marathon. In between there, how has your nutrition changed over the years during sport? Like, was that ever something that was used when you were doing cross country in high school or college?
No, it probably like I guess maybe not in high school was it like that big of a deal because I think I
Mm-hmm.
maybe ran like 20 miles a week in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like I'd eat lunch at whatever time high schoolers eat lunch, like 11 a.m. or something, and then practice would be seventh period, which was like 2 o'clock or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Hmm.
And so by then, like your stomach's settled, but you've also eaten enough food that you
Yeah.
were fine to run 4 miles, or that was like a long day was when we would run
Right.
4 miles. So nutrition was never really something I thought about in high school outside of the fact that like my mom always made sure, especially after swim practice, because I would go when I was still swimming, I would do cross country or track seventh period. My mom would pick me up. We'd drive all the way to Little Rock, which was like a 45-minute drive from where I lived. And then I would swim for 2 to 3 hours, and my mom would like have the protein shake ready for me after that practice so that I could
Wow.
go home and do homework, and she would make dinner and stuff.
Oh,
So my mom was always on top of that, but it was never
yeah.
something that I thought about.
Yeah.
And my mom has she's been a stay-at-home mom since I was like 6 or 5.
Okay.
And so my mom always made like great meals like my whole life. I
Mm,
was very lucky to be the person who took like leftovers to lunch, and then my mom
yeah.
would make us, big meals in the evening. Um, and then when I went to college, I had a really hard time because I had never really cooked for myself. Like I knew how to make mac and cheese really
Yeah.
well and cereal.
Yep.
But I didn't live in the dorms my freshman year because my
Hmm.
mom didn't really want me to like have to eat dorm food. I'm so spoiled
Hmm.
and very thankful for that because
Yeah.
everybody who was eating dorm food was like, this is terrible. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I can't really cook, but I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
do.
Fortunately, I lived with three older teammates,
Hmm.
and they had this thing that they would do where we would all go grocery shopping together and then we would take turns like cooking for each other.
Nice.
And so through that, I kind of like learned how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
But then yeah, in college I like didn't because we would have practice at like 6:30 in the morning
Mm,
in the fall, and I would have such a hard time eating before practice.
mm,
So I feel like for the first year I like didn't eat
hmm.
anything before practice, which is crazy because I was running like 65 miles a week at that point.
Wow. Yeah.
And but then I would like scarf down food after practice because I'd be starving, of course.
Yeah.
But I feel like by the time we got to spring semester, like practice moved to 10 a.m.
Hmm.
and I figured out how to like eat enough in the morning, but give myself enough time to, because I would eat like a real breakfast because 10 a.m.
Yeah.
is pretty late.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the first time I started eating before. But then you'd go back to 6:30 practice in the fall, and it's like, what? I feel like for a while I was eating like protein bars, which looking back, I'm like, how was I not like pooping myself doing
Yeah.
that? But that was probably right around the time that I started just eating cereal for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I'm a cereal diehard. Like, unless I'm running later in the morning, in that case, I'll add like some yogurt or something as well.
Yeah.
But that was right around the time that I started eating cereal before I run, and now that's what I live off of in the mornings.
What's your go-to cereal brand?
Oh, it's changed a lot. So I was a
Yeah.
big Lucky Charms person for a while. But within the last like year and a half, I've gotten really into Trader Joe's, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
have really bad cereal for the most part. But this last like month or two, we found these, I think they're called like Tutti Frutti Cuties or
Oh,
something like
nice.
that. And they're
Yeah.
basically like the Trader Joe's version of Trix. And it's
Okay.
pretty good.
Nice.
So,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, cereal is something like I always talk to my clients about cereal because it's usually something that people can put down a lot of it.
Yeah.
If you think about trying to get in those carbs and something that's tolerable and palatable and that you can put down, cereal is a great
I
option.
Yeah.
So love that.
I mentioned that my mom always made us like great meals, but my mom like also lives and dies by cereal in the morning. And so my brother and my mom and I would just have these like massive bowls of cereal every morning with, like filled all the way to the brim with milk.
Yeah.
And so when I went to college, I stopped doing that because I was like, that's unhealthy. And now I'm like, no, I'm just gonna eat this cereal because it's easy.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It helps you hit that carb mark. And when
Yeah.
you think about like talking about the volume you're doing, it's like a lot of times looking from a nutrition lens, like you have so many opportunities from calories coming in to hit your micronutrient bases that you're probably well above it, even when you are
Yeah.
having bowls like monster bowls of cereal and these kind of things, right? So, yeah, I'm sure you're hitting the mark. So, kind of talking about, we talked about pre the cereal. Do you do that in race morning out of curiosity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly like before Black Canyon, I had a bowl of cereal and a bowl of yogurt because I like wanted more food and I
Yep.
typically eat further away from my run on
Yeah.
race day. Last year I was really into Pop-Tarts for a while, and so I would have at least one package of Pop-Tarts. I tried to eat two before canyons because I was like, oh, I like gotta get more in, but
Yeah.
I was so nervous and nauseous I like barely made it through the first
Mm,
package. But I got really burnt out on Pop-Tarts.
yeah.
There's not as much variety there. Whereas like a
Yeah.
cereal, I can just change cereal type.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do you do like the standard Pop Tarts or do you do like I know like Bobo's has Pop Tarts and these
Oh,
kind of things?
just regular Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
sugariest, so they're the ones I like the most.
Yeah. Nice. So speaking of like race morning breakfast, how much time do you typically give yourself to digest before race start that feels good for you?
I try to give it like 3 hours, but
Hmm.
depending on race time start, like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna wake up at 3 a.m. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the most time I need is like probably 2 hours.
Yeah.
Three
Nice.
is like on the edge where I'm like, am I gonna be hungry by the time I get to the start line? Like I'm usually
Mm,
like eating some Scandinavian swimmers in the car or
yeah.
something, just because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be hungry even if I'm not.
Yeah.
So
That's yeah, smart. So sounds like you got your big bowl of cereal, potentially some Pop-Tarts, and then you're doing the Scandinavian swimmers lead up. Do you do that all the way up until like race start? The like little
no, maybe up to like warm up, which
okay.
is usually like 45 to 50 minutes
Mm,
before. And
hmm.
even then it's like, I'm maybe eating five because I do get like I pretend like I'm not a nervous person and like
Yeah.
I generally feel like I'm not that nervous about racing, but when I try to eat the closer it gets, my
Mm,
body's like, no, no.
no.
You're gonna gag
Yeah.
actually because you are
Oh
nervous.
man. Yeah. Oh. That was one of the things that I took away from the Women in Distant podcast because I was just what was making me smile is your confidence. Like your self-talk to yourself. I just
Yeah.
loved it. I was like, we all need a little MK in our brain, like with that positive self-talk. So yeah, so yeah, it sounds like in reality there's a little bit of nervousness going on there. So
Yeah.
oh
Yeah. I was just gonna say I was always the athlete that like would get on the line at a track race and just start talking to people. And they're like, please shut up. Like I'm like, because they're nervous, so they're trying to like stay in their lane. And I'm
hmm.
like, I'm nervous, so I'm just gonna talk to you about like something that really doesn't matter. I don't even know
Right.
you, but I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
gonna talk, 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 so I don't have to think about the race.
Yeah. Take it out of the brain and take it out, yeah,
Yeah.
outside of it. That's smart. Talking about kind of the nauseousness before or getting nervous, have you ever had GI issues during races?
No. And
That's amazing.
yeah, I know. I feel like I was talking to my husband about this after Black Canyon actually, because I was like, like maybe it'll get me one of these days, but I just have such a hard time understanding how like everybody else is having so many GI issues because for me, like the closest I've come is at Formidable 50K 2 years ago.
Hmm.
I had too much caffeine that morning because I just
Mm,
like bought one of those like canned cold brews and didn't even
mm,
think that it would have more caffeine than my normal cup of coffee.
yeah.
And then I usually have like a caffeinated gel like 15 minutes beforehand. So I
Hmm.
had like 250 or 300 milligrams like in the morning. And then I had another 75 right before the race. And like an hour and a half in, I was so nauseous from caffeine that I
Yeah.
couldn't eat for like 2 hours.
Oh man.
But I've never had like I've never had gastric emptying or anything
Yeah.
like that. Just the one time where I was so nauseous that I couldn't eat.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Like you are very lucky in that regard
Yeah.
too. Do you do you do any like heat training in preparation for your races?
Yes, so the last two times I've done heat training, which were for I think World Championships
Mm-hmm.
in 2023 and then Canyons and Black Canyon last year, I just did passive heat training where I would,
Hmm.
go to the sauna for like 20 minutes at
Hmm.
really, really hot temperatures several days a week.
Yeah.
But this leading into Black Canyon this year, my coach had me do that for like a month, and then the last 2 weeks leading into Black Canyon, I was running on the treadmill or biking in like, all the clothes and stuff for
Yeah.
like 30 minutes
Yeah.
every other day.
Hmm.
And I feel like it may have been more effective, but
Hmm.
like I don't remember getting overheated at canyons last year either. It was a similar temperature, but there's more trees, so it's like hard
Yeah.
to tell.
Yep.
But I do think it was like really useful to actually move and be that hot because then you're
Hmm.
out there and you're like, okay, I've done this before. I wasn't
Yep.
just sitting in the sauna.
Yeah. 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 That's a great point. Um, was the altitude different between those two races or no?
I guess Black Canyon's like probably at like two or starts at 4,000 and ends at one or something like that.
Okay.
Um, and Auburn Canyons is similar
Yeah.
because Auburn's at like 1,200 feet, and I think that
Mhm.
China Wall's at like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's more. I'm actually not sure.
Hmm. Yeah. And because that, do you feel like you ever get affected by altitude?
High altitude, yes, I have to be careful about like how I eat when I'm at like Mammoth
Mm.
or I didn't have many problems at Pikes Peak Ascent, but I think that's
Mhm.
because it was all uphill.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mammoth Trail Fest is like I've had to learn how to like kind of eat, but mostly that's like caffeine. I have to be really
Mm.
careful with caffeine at high altitude. But living in Reno, my house is at 5,500 feet, and so I'm high enough that usually altitude doesn't bother me unless I'm up above 10,000 feet for a while.
Hmm. When you say you have to be careful with caffeine at altitude, do you feel like it kicks in faster like alcohol does at
I
altitude, or
think
what do you
so. I
notice?
just
Yeah.
get like I get really like jittery or
Jittery.
like
Yeah.
not as nauseous as like I did that one time, but
Mm.
like I feel like I can't see as well, when you kind of get dizzy and you're
Yeah.
like, "Whoo, I've had too
Yeah.
much." Like so I think yeah, I've
Yeah.
decided that I have to spread out my caffeine a lot more when I race high
Yeah.
high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart. Okay. So kind of taking it a little bit in preparation pre-race, do you do any specific sort of like carb loading or glycogen supercompensation strategies leading up to your race, or do you just
I
hammer more
try to eat
carbs?
like relatively normally,
Yeah.
just because, I feel good when I run during the
Hmm.
week, and so I don't change much with my diet. I add a little bit more like candy in the 2 days
Hmm.
before, like just, like, oh, I'm sitting in the car, I'll eat a handful of candy, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
otherwise, like I'm still having the same breakfast. I'm still probably just like snacking around for lunch like I
Hmm.
normally do, and then I'm eating like I eat Thai food a lot of the times or like spicy stuff the night before the
Yeah.
race, and people are like,
Oh
how?
my gosh. Yeah.
It's like I don't know. Like before Black Canyon, I had bean and cheese and chicken burritos for dinner. So
Wow. Yeah. That is impressive. I mean, there's a good amount of fiber in there, but there's
yeah,
also a lot of carbs and probably
yeah,
salt, sodium.
a lot
So
of
you,
salt.
yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I love hearing like all the different unique things that athletes do because yeah, it's good eye openers. But yeah, and then your gut is like totally cool. So that
Yeah,
sounds,
maybe that's why I don't have as many GI issues, is because I
yeah,
just like
just keep the fiber
eat.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I eat the fiber before the races, and
Oh
it's just
yeah.
like, well, it's what we do every other day, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not having these like radical swings and
Yeah.
the nutrition that comes in. So, covered kind of lead up, race morning breakfast, topping off with some swimmers, Swedish swimmers or whatever. Is that what they're called? Scandinavian swimmers.
Scandinavian summers. Shout out
And
to Trader Joe's.
yeah, my world of that is so I have a lack of knowledge there just because I have celiac. So all these like
Oh, yeah.
delicious gummy candies, oh, I can't eat any of them. So yeah, my knowledge is in another brain space, but I'm jealous. So then kind of as you get into the race, what does your setup from like fueling and hydration look like? And I'm sure it's like race dependent where crew and aid stations and all that stuff is, but do you always start off with like a pack or will that vary based off of the course profile and
Yeah, I'm still trying to like kind of figure that out, but I think
mm,
I'm becoming more of a pack
mm,
person because generally I don't drink enough water because I'm
oh,
like, I'm just gonna wear a belt and I'll have this like one bottle and like maybe a hand bottle. But I get really annoyed with hand bottles, but I still
mm,
try it all the time. And so like for Black Canyon last year, I wore a belt and a
mm,
hand bottle and like had planned to do that for the whole race, even before I knew it was, not gonna be hot. And I
yeah.
think I would have like maybe died out there if it had been
Oh my
hot.
gosh.
Whereas like this year I had a pack because I was like, I don't want to carry something for 62 miles.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I was planning on drinking like a liter an hour.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to carry that much water like in my hands. So I was like,
Right.
I'm gonna have a pack so I can just run and just
Mm.
like have my arms available.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think canyons made me into like more of a pack person because I was
Mm.
really upset that I had to wear a pack because it was mandatory gear. But
Oh,
like
yeah.
halfway into the race, I was like, this is actually so nice. Like my arms aren't tired.
Yeah. That is right. That's
Yeah,
nice.
and you can stuff so much ice and whatever you need into the pack that it's like honestly more effective than just like not having anything on your skin.
Hmm.
Because people are like, oh, it's hot, so you don't want to wear a pack. It's like, yeah, but you can put a lot of stuff in the pack. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's smart. That is very smart. The external cooling mechanisms.
yeah.
So you have, it sounds like some bottles in your pack. And then what's your nutrition strategy like on course?
So normally I'm trying to get like 90 grams of carbs an hour.
Nice.
And that was when I was doing like the shorter stuff.
Hmm.
So when I was doing like Golden Trail and 50Ks and stuff like that, I was like really trying to shoot for like 80 to 90 grams an hour.
Hmm.
And I did that at canyons, like from start to finish.
Nice.
And it went well. Like I actually felt really recovered. Like I thought I was gonna not be able to walk the day after
Hmm.
canyons. And obviously I was like weird sore, but
Yeah.
my muscles were actually like not too bad because I think I had hydrated and eaten enough during the race that I recovered really well. But I also felt really heavy. Like I got really, because I was constantly drinking carbs. And so
Hmm.
like I got the little like pooch in my belly where I'm like running with my stomach out because I can't
Yeah.
like empty anything anymore. Like I
Yeah.
never got cramps or anything. I just felt like heavy.
Yeah.
And so I figured for Black Canyon, I was going to try like 75 grams an hour to
Hmm.
see if I could like maybe feel a little bit less heavy, but still feel strong enough to like finish well.
Hmm.
And I don't think that that was like the move. Like I'm glad
Hmm.
I practiced it so that I would know because
Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason I did it is like I raced Katie Shy, do you know what canyons that day?
Hmm.
And she was like, yeah, I eat like 60 grams of carbs an hour. And I was like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
But like, everybody's different and
Yep.
like that works for her. And so I was like, maybe I'll just back off a little bit, see how it feels.
Hmm.
And it was like fine. Like I felt like I was eating enough carbs for the most part, and I think it was mostly hydration, so it's hard to tell, but that last 2 hours of Black Canyons was miserable for me because I got
Mm.
so behind on water.
Mm.
But I think that, maybe there's a part of me that thinks if I had had more carbs, like I could still kind of make up for that lack of water at some point. I don't
Mm.
know. So
Yeah.
I think I'll probably go back. For the marathon, I'll only do 60 grams of carbs an hour because I'm
Hmm.
moving so fast that I can't eat any more than that.
Right.
But then for states, I think my goal will go back to 90 grams because it's like if I feel heavier, like maybe I'm 3 to 4 pounds heavier with like all the water, but like I'd rather that and be able to
Hmm.
run at the end of the race than not feel as heavy per se, but like
Yeah.
my legs just not have anything left.
Right. Right. Did you, when you say you like felt that, do you feel like it was like fluid volume being retained, or do you think it was the carb
I
portion?
think it's just fluid and
Yeah.
it's probably because I don't practice drinking enough.
Mm.
That when I get out there and I'm like, I'm gonna drink a liter an hour, and my body's like, what?
We don't know how to process that.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah, you are very lucky you don't get GI issues.
I know.
That
I
is,
practice the carbs really well, but like the
yeah.
water is
Yeah.
questionable.
Yeah. Well, the water is a tricky one because it's one that changes depending on the race environment. And yeah,
And also it's been so cold here that like drinking 2 bottles is like so hard to do when it's
right.
30 degrees out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. Do
Yeah.
you so how does like your caffeine timing work through something like that? Like are you doing one an hour, or do you wait to like save it till the end? How do you view that?
Yeah, so that was another thing we changed for Black Canyon because I was just trying a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
Because why not? You gotta
Yeah.
like figure it out. And so usually I would take a caffeine gel like right before the race, right? Like
Hmm.
15 minutes before. But because I was nervous, I would always feel like a little bit nauseous or jittery for that first like hour to an hour and a half. And so my coach and I decided that maybe we wait until hour 3 this time. Like I still have my morning coffee, but he's like, it's
Hmm.
early enough in the morning that like maybe you'll be fine until hour
Hmm.
3. And so we tried that, and um, I think that that was a bit of a mistake. I think
Mm,
in the future, instead of waiting until hour three, I still think that not taking it before, just having a regular gel
hmm.
before is a good idea. But I think like an hour would be perfect place to start
Yeah.
because I was dragging that first 20
Mm,
miles. Like I just felt like we were moving really fast, but I just felt like I was dead. Like I had no
mm,
energy, especially after like the first hour and a half.
hmm.
And then at hour three, I took a caffeine gel, and like 15 minutes later, I was like, holy shit, I'm a new person. This is
Yeah.
crazy. And so, yeah, I think in the future, because I usually, after that, I took it every 2 hours, and that's like
Mm,
perfect for me. But I
nice.
think, yeah, in the future, we'll do coffee in the morning, and then we'll start at hour one, and then do, like 1, 3, 5, 7. And if I feel like in the 100 miler, like I'm getting sleepy or like, I don't know, like just not because I feel like you can tell when you're like starting to drift,
Yep.
and that's like, okay, I need more caffeine.
Hmm.
Like, just have an extra caffeinated gel in there in case I
Yeah.
do need more as the race gets longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart. Talking about like the cognitive piece, getting like whether it's mentally fatigued. Have you ever messed around with ketones during or
No,
anytime? No.
I
Okay.
haven't. No. Some of my friends have done it on runs and stuff
Yeah.
because, like I think SIS makes a gel that
Mm.
has like caffeine and ketones or something in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But no, I've never tried those.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about individual athletes' experience with ketones because the literature during exercise is like doesn't show any performance
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah.
So, but there are certain people that are yeah, they're just like it worked for me. But I think it's like more of a cognitive thing. Like I felt
Yeah.
more
Like a
focused.
placebo type thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it also tastes awful. So I
Yeah.
don't.
Caffeine works great for me,
Yeah,
so I don't
caffeine
need to
has a
add
similar
another
idea.
like layer that might make things a little weird over
Right.
here.
Yeah. You don't want to risk it. Okay. And then I didn't ask you what are your go-to, if you're allowed to share, go-to fueling products that you use on course?
I solely use NeverSecond, and
Okay.
I've been doing that for like 3 years now, like way before
Nice.
they picked me up. And so yeah, I prefer to drink my carbs and
Mm-hmm.
then like supplement with a caffeinated gel or like a
Mm-hmm.
regular gel if I need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I use their C30 mix to make my drinks because it has 200 milligrams per 30, 200 milligrams of sodium per
Sodium. Mm-hmm.
30 grams of carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the C90 is 90 grams of carbs, but just 200 milligrams for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless I'm racing in the cold, which pretty much never happens, I use like the C30 and then just make it into a 90-gram drink.
Nice.
And then, yeah, I think like I said, in the future, I will change it back to 90. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was making like a 75-gram drink that I was drinking every hour, and now I'll just change it back to 90.
Yeah.
And then I just like super carb when I have my caffeinated gel because I don't really
Right.
change my drink mix, and it doesn't seem to like bother me. Like if anything, I'll just have the gel and I won't finish the drink mix because I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather that than like, Tommy hand me 60 grams and a gel, but then I
Mm-hmm.
like can't get the gel down when I only have 60 grams in my bottle.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Does Never Second have a caffeinated drink mix or no?
No, they don't.
Okay.
But Rod Rod Farver is really into mixing his gels into water,
Oh, yeah.
which I thought was too sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I've thought about doing that, like with like just putting three caffeinated gels into some water and then having
Yeah.
that on me,
Mm.
like for a lot of the day. But
Mhm.
I find it's just easier to like slam the gel because they have
Yeah.
a cola flavor,
Mm.
a coffee flavor, and a berry flavor. And so I don't like coffee flavored gels, but I'll go back and forth between the cola and the berry.
Yeah, that's nice. Makes up that flavor profile too.
Yeah.
Are you ever grabbing any food from the aid, like on course? Or you ever
No,
stick stick with
at
the
Black
plan?
Canyon, I did ask Tommy for like just salt. Like I just wanted table salt because I had gotten so behind on my water that I was like, I need like lots and lots of water, but I also just need some salt to like,
Yeah.
get this in. And I think that's like the closest I've ever come to like taking something from an aid station.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you tried the Never Second that sodium booster that they have?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
used it a lot of it. Well, I had planned to use a lot of it for CCC because it was so hot and humid.
Mm-hmm.
Because like heat by itself I don't seem to need to like really double up on sodium, like, with 90 grams, I'm getting 600 milligrams an hour, and that seems to
Yeah.
be fine.
Hmm.
But at CCC, I was pushing or planning to push closer to like 1,000 milligrams
Yeah.
because it was just so humid and really hot. And I'm a really salty sweater. So if there's like any humidity, I'm just like dumping salt.
Have you had your sweat test? Have you ever your sweat sodium tested?
I haven't. I plan to do it before Western States because I think it's
Nice.
like a little bit more, like I got
Yeah.
to get really serious about the sodium. But
Hmm.
if you see me walking into the grocery store after a run, like I'm the girl that's like
That's all white.
ghostly white because I'm like just covered in salt, and people are like, "Ew, why are you here?" My black pack is like white,
Yeah.
by the end of a run.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you're in Reno, so
mhm.
what's the altitude there? Like, is that
Down in
40 something?
town, it's like 4,500 feet, but yeah, I
Okay.
live at 40 or 55. I live a little
Nice.
bit higher. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
So you
pretty
have,
dry here though.
yeah, that's the thing I noticed is like the drier the air, the more the athlete notices the salt on them
Yeah,
versus like the more humid, it doesn't get pulled, the fluid doesn't get pulled out as fast. But
yeah,
yeah, that's that. I'd be so curious what your sodium losses are. Okay,
yeah.
so we got your fueling game plan. It sounds like kind of a bottle an hour. Is that what you're targeting? Because it has your carb mix in it too.
So at Black Canyon, I was trying to do 2 bottles an hour because I knew it would be hot, and so I had one bottle that was carbs and one bottle
Mm.
that was just regular water.
Yeah.
And I would say I did that for the first, like probably 6 hours, maybe
Hmm.
5. But then I ran out of water at some point and had like an hour stretch where I had no water. And so then I was like drinking like 3 bottles an hour. Like every time I got to an aid station, I was just filling up everything I had and like downing things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I probably averaged out to like 2 bottles an hour, but
Yeah.
it just didn't come as consistently as I had hoped for.
Yeah. Wow. And how many ounces are in the bottle, do you think? Or was that an hour? Like,
So it's 500 milliliters on each side, so a liter
okay.
total would be the
Yeah.
plan. I think it's states I'll probably have to shoot for more. It's just so
Mhm.
hard to carry that much water.
Yeah.
But now that
Yeah.
I'm used to the pack, I think I could do like a pack and a belt and just have like an extra bottle in the belt.
Hmm.
We're trying to figure that out still, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. With that coming up, how many opportunities do you get to kind of trade out your bottles?
That's a great question. Because I've crewed Ida Nielsen the last 2 years
Hmm.
and paced her, and I feel like we saw her. I mean, you see them at Robinson Flat, Michigan Bluff, Forest Hill. Then you go all the way to Rucky Chucky, and then you go to Way Too Cool. So that's 5 crewed aid stations in the
Okay.
last 100K basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's like 4, just aid stations at the beginning that are
Okay.
along the way. But there you're not changing your bottles, you're just like
Hmm.
filling stuff up likely.
Right.
Um, so in the second half, you got plenty of aid, I think that,
Yeah.
like I've done basically that whole thing at Canyons and
Hmm.
did just fine with, I think it was 3 aid stations with crew.
Hmm.
I think it's just like nailing down that first bit where you're just like out in the middle of forest land and there's just uncrewed aid stations for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's that's uh that's a fun one to do the math on for
Yeah.
that, right? How long are you going
I'll
between
be
age?
taking probably for that first part at least, a lot of bottles that just have powder in them that I can like
Mhm.
fill up. So I'm not carrying so
Smart.
much like
Yeah.
water, but
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so we've talked about kind of the during. What are you doing right when you finish a race? Are you getting food in you? Are you trying to cool off? What's happening?
Most of the time I'm going to grab a beer and a burger.
That's good. That's good. You
Uh,
have an appetite.
yeah, the last 2, I mean, Canyons and Black Canyon, I had to drug test after both,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. We love drug testing,
Hmm.
but it does keep you from food for a while unless you have
Yeah.
like a protein shake right there. But the
Mm.
likelihood that I'm going to drink a protein shake that close to the end of the race is really low.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I usually don't want to eat that much, but like after Canyons, while I was in drug testing, my husband like brought me a burger, and so I'm
Oh,
like sitting
nice.
there like trying to eat the burger is, I think I
Yeah.
maybe had like a half of it.
Hmm.
But then I went, after drug testing, like 2 hours later, I was like, yeah, I could have 2 beers. I haven't had any food, but like this makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how we drove home that day. Like because I somehow was not nauseous. Like we drove all the way back to Reno that
Wow.
day and I was fine. Whereas after Black Canyon, I had gotten so dehydrated that after the race I was just screwed. Like
Yeah.
I did eat like most of a McDonald's burger, but then I was so incredibly nauseous for the rest of the day because I had just
Hmm.
gotten so behind that I almost felt like I was drunk, like my most drunk self, because I was just like, I can't touch or think about anything. And like Tommy would ask me to do something and I'd just start like gagging for no
Oh
reason.
no.
So after Black Canyon, I did not do a good job of refueling because I was,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Shoot.
dehydration is the worst. I never want that again.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, my pee at drug testing was like suspect. And fortunately my husband was like on top of it. He was like, you have to drink, drink, drink. Like didn't
Yeah.
want to, but he kept like shoving water bottles in my
Oh,
face.
yeah.
But oh, that was
Oh,
the worst.
yeah. 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 The dehydration thing is really wild because it does affect your appetite because it's having an effect on your core temperature and your heart rate.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, if you're not eating and then you're not starting the recovery process and you're
My
just,
muscles felt so bad for like 3, 4 days. I was
yeah.
like, after canyons, I could at least go on a walk like with my dogs. And after
Yeah.
Black Canyon, I was like, I can't even like think about walking. Like my
Yeah.
muscles hurt so bad.
Oh man. Oh man. I remember one of I think it was one of my professors in undergrad. He was talking about how when you fuel with that amount of volume during your sessions, you're essentially already starting your recovery process if you
Yeah.
can hit those targets, right? So yeah, it does make a big difference. Okay, so what about like recovery? So you talked about kind of like going on a walk. Are there other things you do to like help heal the body? Are you doing compression boots? Is it just getting some movement going? Is there nutrition or like supplement like omega-3s or anything like that that you target to try and help speed up the recovery process?
I just try to eat like as much as I would when I'm training,
Hmm.
because I feel like I'm really bad at just like not being hungry or like being like for honestly forgetting to eat half the time because it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm home from my run, so now I make lunch. It's like
Hmm.
I wake up and I don't have to run, so all of a sudden I've had a cup of coffee and it's 11 a.m. and I'm like,
Oh
oh, why am I so shaky? It's like
no.
we didn't eat anything, like 'cause
Yeah,
your
yeah.
day wasn't planned out like it normally is. But so I try to eat a lot of food, even if I don't want to. And then, yeah, in the beginning, I just take like a bunch of like really short, like 10-minute walks with my dogs, usually flat because downhills hurt really bad.
Mm,
Or on the treadmill, like if it's like, when I got back from Black Canyon, it snowed a ton. So I was doing a
yeah.
lot of treadmill walking. And then 3, 4 days in, I move on the bike like really, really slowly. Like I think the first day I was like, I got my heart rate up to 98. Like that's pretty cool. And then yeah, I bike for quite a bit just to like move, but I still
Mhm.
walk a couple of times a day because my
Yeah,
coaches and I agree with them, like is of the mind that more little movement instead of being like, okay, I walked for an hour, like, and now I'm
right.
done for the day is a better way to like recover. So, like bike for an hour and then like take the dogs for a walk 2 hours later and then maybe like
Hmm.
walk on the treadmill 2 hours after that.
Yeah.
And then I started trying to run this week.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just somebody who like really takes a long time to recover from
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of things.
Hmm.
Because yeah, people are like, it gets easier every time you do it. And I'm like, didn't feel easier this time. I'm still like, I still feel like crap. Like people are
Yeah.
running, like 2, 3 days after. I'm like, couldn't be me. Could
Yeah.
not be me.
Gosh.
But I have been using the compression boots a little bit,
Yeah.
hot tubbing. We have a hot tub, so
Nice.
like trying to just do little short sessions to like want to stretch afterwards.
Right.
Um, yeah. So even like today, like I ran a little bit yesterday, and today I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna run. Like I might just
Yeah.
I walked the boys before this, and I might walk them this
Hmm.
afternoon, and then like run tomorrow. I'm not like in a big hurry because
Yeah.
I run so much. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's such a good outlook too, because I think a lot of people do run into the mistake of like, oh, I feel okay. Like I don't need to take like a recovery week. And it's like, well, you just
Yeah.
spent all that time like building up to that training and the race. And yeah, so yeah, don't
Yeah.
forget to give your body a
I'm like
break.
I like want to run some days and then other days I'm like I don't really want to run still and so I just don't.
Yeah, that's
It's gonna be
good.
a
Listen
long
to your body.
season, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't want to hit the burnout too early.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're getting close on time here, what's coming up? I mean, we talked about Boston, and then you got your 100 miler, right?
Yeah.
And so have those on the radar. Any, I know you're going to bump up your carb intake per hour, but any other nutrition changes you think you're going to be making throughout the season?
I've made like a New Year's resolution to try to add more vegetables into my diet. I like live off of dairy.
Oh yeah.
It's like this just habit from college. I don't even know if it's a habit. I just love dairy, but
Yeah.
like in college I was running so much and I found it really hard to eat enough. And so
Mm.
I would just drink like glasses of whole milk. And I love whole milk. So like
Yeah.
my husband makes fun of me because he's like he like opens the fridge. He's like, this is just a dairy fridge. Like we just have
Yeah.
like milk and cheese and yogurt and
Yeah.
so I'm probably not gonna back off the dairy, but I'm just trying to like add more
Yeah.
vegetables into my life because I am
Yeah.
bad at that. Like I'll make a whole meal and it'll be great and delicious and there'll be like protein and carbs and then there'll be not a single vegetable on the plate. And Tommy's like,
Yeah.
we like, can we have a salad or something? Like, oh, I guess so. It's just like so
Yeah.
hard to make that
Yeah.
vegetable that takes 2 days or two
Yeah.
minutes.
Do
So
are you a fan of fruit? Like, do you do any fruits in your?
no,
No.
I'm
Do you do
not. Like
any? You do beans.
I do beans. I do
That's
like
kind of a
beans.
vegetable.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes like I'll eat tofu for lunch, like as
Hmm.
in my lunch, and that's like kind of a vegetable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I like berries,
Hmm.
but I don't often buy them because they are
Yeah.
expensive. And so like when I'm at the store, it's not like the first thing I go for, but if
Yeah.
there's like blackberries or raspberries around, I'll eat those. But like I buy my husband for his lunch every day, like bananas and apples, and they're always at the house, and I will eat like a couple bites of an apple and be like, yep, that was pretty good. Do you want the rest of this? Like,
Yeah. Maybe
so
that's why your gut too is so solid. Because yeah, if you're not getting like the veggies and
just
fruit
no
fiber
fiber.
sources. Yeah, maybe it's just naturally low in fiber.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing, fun fact, milk is actually one of the best rehydration beverages over electrolytes, but
Yeah.
no one really wants to drink milk after.
Oh, that's the first thing I have when I get back from a run, even if it's like
Really?
hot outside, is like a
Yeah.
big glass of whole milk or
Oh
whole
my
chocolate milk.
God.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to circle back to your two truths and a lie to make sure we stay on
Oh,
schedule
yeah.
here. Okay, so you're the youngest of all your siblings, that your family was upset that you didn't go to school for music and that you've been an athlete since you were 5. I said the youngest of your siblings was a lie. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yay. All
I'm the
right.
oldest.
You are of how many?
Just two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, girl,
I have a
or
little brother.
oh,
He's
brother.
2 years younger than me.
Nice.
And yeah, he's awesome. He lives here in town, and so we hang out a lot.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Reno?
No, I came out here for college. I was born in Arkansas, moved
Okay.
around a bit, lived in Illinois,
Mhm.
Nebraska,
Wow.
moved back to Arkansas when I was in junior high and
Mhm.
finished out high school there, and then ended up at the University of Nevada for running.
Nice.
And at that point, my parents also moved to California.
Hmm.
So my brother was like right over the hill.
Mm.
When I was in college, they were living in Rockland. And so
Okay.
when it was his time to go to college, he was either going to with me to the University of Nevada or he was going to go back to Arkansas State with his best friend there.
Mm.
And he chose me. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, so I've been living here since 2012. My brother's been here since 2014. And my parents actually just moved here this year because my dad
Oh,
retired. And
fun.
so now everybody's here.
That's great. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. That's great. Did you room with your brother at all in college, or were you?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think my last 2 years of college, we lived in an apartment together.
I did
So,
the same thing with my younger brother, and I had two roommates before him that were awful.
yeah.
And then when I got to room with my brother, it's like you just know how to live together already, so it just worked
Yeah.
out
And
really
you can like
well.
tell your brother like, "Hey, could you stop doing this?" Whereas
Yeah.
like with a roommate, you're like, the thing you're doing is not that great. Like,
Yeah. I'm gonna need you to pitch in on the cleaning up the kitchen
yeah.
kitchen every once in a while.
If Drew like
Um,
didn't answer, or if he was like, no, I'm not gonna do that, I would just call my parents and be like, Drew is not doing this thing. And they're like, you guys are 20 years old. Like,
yeah.
can't you figure this out? And we're like, no.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Okay, well, where can people find you, follow you, follow along on your journey this year? Where can we link in the show notes for them?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm MK Sully with an I, MK Sully with an I. Subhub podcast with Danny. That's like my main social media, I feel like, is just like doing the podcast with Danny. Um, yeah, I think I'm just on Instagram. I feel like I need to get onto like a blog or something, but I just don't really,
Yeah.
I don't like writing that much.
Oh
So
yeah, I'm with you.
Instagram and the Subhub, those are like my two
Sweet.
outlets.
Do you have like a website, a professional website for you?
Nope, just the
No.
SubHub one.
All right. Okay. Well, we will link both of those in the show notes for the listeners. And then, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, MK. This has been really fun.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.